evening. You're in the Cordero Report. I'm Johnny Cordero. And as many of you who know us know, what I try to do is I try to keep abreast of what's going on because our objective is always to educate, to empower. And I'm not going to be too long about this, but I think it's something that we need to discuss very briefly, and that is the importance of the upcoming midterm election. Now, everybody always says that every election is the most important election in a lifetime, and everybody. But I'll tell you something. This is one election that is really, really important, and I'll tell you why. It's because the forces of mega Republicans and others have essentially put in place a Supreme Court that is conservative, and that's calling it conservative is giving it more credit than it's due. Um, and not to mention that they've stacked the federal district courts, and more importantly, the Court of Appeals, the 12th Court of Appeals, which are functionally the um, last resort for most cases. Most cases go to die in the Court of Appeals. So it's very important that you get out and vote. It's particularly important in South Carolina because we have a background of interference with voting and a whole lot of things that I won't go into right now. But just want to remind you that it's important that you vote. We're 13 days from the midterm elections, and I am honored, really honored, to have with me uh, a black woman. And for those of you who know me, I believe with all my heart. I was raised to believe that we have to support, we have to protect, and we have to defend our families, our children, and women who have deemed it necessary to be part of our lives. And so, what I've tried to do is I've tried to push black women often as I possibly could to give them the opportunity to speak out, to make their voices heard. So I'm particularly honored today because I have Rosemounda Peggy Butler, who is about to make history, who is running for Secretary of State of South Carolina. And if she is successful, she will be the first African American, to my knowledge, and certainly the first female. And in advance, what we've done is we've talked for a moment, and we're talking only about just giving her the opportunity to make an opening statement and then to say pretty much what she wants to, and then to give us a closing statement. Because this is not an opportunity, it's not a debate, it's certainly not a debate with me, and it's not a debate with you. What it is an opportunity for a woman who has served her country, a woman who is well respected, to give her the opportunity to address our listeners. And again, so I'm not going to take more time. I've probably taken too much as I should, and people say that I talk too much and I tend to pontificate. And with that, I will introduce to you, for those of you who don't know her, I will introduce to you Rosemounda Peggy Butler, candidate for Secretary of State of South Carolina. Peggy, good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Cordero, and thank you so very much for inviting me to Cordero's report.
It is
I
my
am pleased and honored to be here. I am Rosemounda Peggy Butler, and I am running for Secretary of State to make South Carolina one of the best states to do business. I have served in the military. I am a combat disabled veteran of Desert Storm. I am a retired registered nurse. I also served West Columbia City Council. I was the first African American to be elected to West Columbia City Council and the first female mayor pro tem. And I want to make sure that what we do for South Carolina this season will be beneficial to everyone, especially those who are entrepreneurs. I am a business owner myself, and small business owners go through a lot of issues of not being able to pay their employees, sometimes not even pay themselves because of lack of resources, lack of information. And I want to make the Secretary of State's office an informational office that you can pick up the phone and call and get somebody to answer the phone, not just look on the website or listen to somebody's voice. That's basically why I want to be Secretary of State. But the Secretary of State's office across the country basically oversees elections. Well, South Carolina is not one of those states. South Carolina is a business hub registry for profit and nonprofit. Appointments and commissions come through the office by the governor. The notary public also comes through the office by, uh, we have notary publics across the state. And they basically hold the South Carolina seal. That seal is the legal seal for all documents that you have in your possession. I want to increase opportunities for entrepreneurs, women, African Americans, people with disabilities, and veterans. If we create a task force, we can make sure that monies, funding can go to the businesses. When you have big corporations, most of them they get their monies tax incentives. Small business owners doesn't get any tax incentives. So they have to put their money in their business and work from there unless they can get monies from small business administration. But there's private funding out there also that most folk are not really aware of. And most businesses they either die or thrive in the first 2 years. And we have at the Secretary of State's office now a website. It's a one-stop shop. But if you don't know how to navigate that website, then you're basically lost. So I'd like to see, like I said, a task force, someone to answer the phone, and then create an entrepreneur camp for young people. Some of our young and best start at 6 years old. They're very innovative, got great minds. So I
Indeed, they
know
are.
a young lady that has a business now. She started as a lemonade stand, 5 years going. She has an LLC and she has been selling her lemonade over the internet. And it's good too. So I think can be accomplished. I am a mother. I have two children, and both of them are ministers of the gospel. Well, believe it or not, one is a Baptist preacher, uh, Pastor C.J. Butler. Then the other is AME, Reverend Dr.
Oh,
D.
wow.
Dawkins Hagler. So sometimes you listen
Amazing.
to the conversations and you be going like, mm-hmm. And one went to a predominantly um, black seminary and the other one didn't. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on between the theology. I'm going, okay. And I listen on the sideline. I don't intervene. I just keep my mouth shut for a little bit. And then I have six grandchildren. And my oldest grandchildren ages 20 to 26. Then I have two baby grands that are 7, and the other one be 9 in November, and two great grands. So the numbers are 6, 7, 8, 9 right now with the grands and the great grands,
Oh
and
boy.
and they keep me busy. God, they keep me busy. I let them have sleepovers. I don't get any sleep. They sleep, but I don't get any. So, and we are a family oriented political arena. Um, my two great grands were with me 2 weeks ago in the parade in the community. We had a parade, and they participated there with me. And the two grands went to Charleston with me for the Blue Jamboree. And they passed out my cards and said, "Vote for my Mima." I'm going like, wow. And I didn't even have to tell them to do that. They did it on their own. So it was nice because everybody, when I introduced them, they all applauded and they said, "Oh, you got great little helpers." And I think they're going to be politicians later on in life. But actually, the state has to have more diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're missing the boat. We have missed the mark. And at some point in time, we've got to bring it back together. And I honestly believe through the Secretary of State's office, I'll be able to do that. Oh, let me tell you,
Go ahead.
one
I'm
more
sorry. Sorry.
thing with the Secretary
Go
of
ahead.
State's office.
Yes.
Even though we don't oversee elections, the Electoral College is in that office. So in 2 years will be the presidential election. So we must ensure that we have people in there that's going to not be biased as to what the elections, the presidential election is going to really take over. Also in that office, once you have through the election commission, all of the votes are certified. But once they leave the election commission, they come back over to the Secretary of State's office. And then that office sends out the commissions for those who have been elected with the state seal on it. So there are a lot of things that goes on in the Secretary of State's office that people are really not aware of in South Carolina.
All right. Here's my first question for you. Okay. I'm um, I'm a young, not really, but I'm a young, say 21-year-old. I'm registered to vote, but I don't really think that there's any benefit to my vote. I think my vote is probably just going to be taken for granted. And, plus I got other things I could do on election day. Um, how would you encourage me to get out and vote for you and to vote just generally? What advice would you have? Inspire me.
Okay. A lot of our younger generation, I don't know if you call it Gen X or whatever alphabet you want to put there.
I'm lost on those two myself, but go ahead. I'm one of those. I'm in there somewhere. Go ahead.
Okay. A lot of them really don't vote because they don't really know the history behind voting. Um, when they're in school, it depends on what high school they went to, whether they were taught in school the importance of voting, the benefits that are involved. For instance, when you start voting on the local level, because a lot of times people only vote presidential. On the local level, you have city councils. That's the first. And your city council people elect your police chief and the mayor is also elected, but the city council elects the police chief and the judge. As a young person, you need to be aware of that. Your police chief hires your police officers that
Mm,
may not look like you. The judge may not look like you. So if you're voting on the local level and the makeup of your community, you can basically change how that looks, how that works as a young person. And then you go to your county council, and your county council basically does the same thing, except for you have chairs of county council and then all of the other departments that's there. And then you go on to the House and the Senate, on up the ladder to the governor. But it's important because you don't realize how much rights you have as a voter.
mm.
If you voting, then you have a voice. But if you're not voting, then you can't complain about what has happened around you because you did not exercise your right to vote. And there was a time when we could not vote at all, and people died for the right for us to vote. And I think as a young person, you can determine as far as your job may be mediocre, you're not getting the wages you need. But if you are a voting person, you can determine who you elect that maybe can change your minimum wage. It maybe go from $8 to $20. You never know. But the consequences of not voting, you don't get anything. So that's what I'll probably tell you how why you need to vote.
I think I'm going to vote.
Well, I hope you vote.
And I mean by that that that's precisely what I think people need to hear. And I just wanted to see your heart where your heart is at. And I understand that. Let me ask you another question, if I may. Um,
Sure.
the current Secretary of State's been around for a while. Um, been in the office. I forget how many terms it was. I think it was six, but I'm not. Don't hold me to that. But anyway, he's been in there for a while. So my question to you is, what do you do to improve on what has already been done, or would you just scrap it all, or would you? You have to. I'm asking, I guess. Do you have a vision for the office of Secretary of State? The things that you need, that you want to do, or need to do, or need to correct, that you could do. What are you going to do, hitting the ground first day in office?
First day in office, I would basically just see exactly um, how the office basically operates, more or less. There's not a whole lot that I can say that's not being done, but I do know for new businesses, new entrepreneurs, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. I've talked to a lot of businesses, and especially veterans. When you go through a maze of trying to figure out how do you get your LLC, office a nonprofit, then what are the steps? And you can read, I mean, everybody can read, but if there was a task force that could take you step by step, and it can be done. We have different resources out there like Maitland Score, um, PTAC, all of those agencies, SBA, are geared to help you start a business. Now, they will start a business, and once you get all of your paperwork completed and you start your business, but if you don't go back and try to maintain, or even if you start struggling, the question will be, where do I go from here? And you may not want to go back to the PTAC or Midland Score, but there should be something in the Secretary of State's office that can direct you to where your funding sources are. And if not, that's what I want to do. Create a task force that will help you not manipulate, but go through the system to find out where can I secure funding. And a lot of that is not taught. There's Morgan Stanley. They have money. There are plenty of opportunities out there to get funding and not wait until you deplete your resources, not wait until you're on the verge of going broke, that you can call it. And like a hotline, have a hotline and have people to call, and then we can direct you where you need to go as far as getting some assistance and not let you drown when you don't really know what to do. Because a lot of times people won't ask until they basically drown, and then it's too late. Um, I
Well,
believe, hmm,
no, no, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
no, that's okay. But I think most of the businesses that I've talked to were struggling. They're still struggling. We have to come up with some type of, and it has to go across the lines back to the state house and have them increase the minimum wage in order to be more productive. Because most of the mom and pops, they can't afford to pay you that $15 an hour if they're not getting any funding from any place else.
Right. I think that one of the things I get as I travel around and people that I talk to, one of the things I often hear, and I was going to say, not most often, but very often, that I hear is support and information for young entrepreneurs,
Right.
small businesses, and it seems to be on everyone's agenda. So it sounds to me as though that what you would be doing is to create a situation in which you will be able to educate, to empower. And I think that that's something that's sorely needed, and I think that that's what people are asking for. um, as Has that job been done well um, by the current administration, in your view?
Now, I can't say it has been done well. Maybe not well enough.
Okay, I see. I
Right.
see.
You know, a lot of times when we call someplace, you get an answering service or you get a voicemail, or it says you can go to www dot blah blah blah.
Hmm.
And a lot of times when you go to www dot whatever it is, you can't find what you're looking for because you may not know what you're even looking for. But if you had somebody who was well versed and who has already been in the business arena, who's already maneuvered everything, because there are experts out there who have done it all. They started, failed, started over, failed, and now they have succeeded. And those are the folk that you want to have in there who can direct someone and encourage them not to just throw in the towel, not to just say, well, um, or maybe you need to do something else. Because I've had somebody tell me, well, maybe this is not what you need to be doing. Somebody mentioned they wanted to do government contracting. Well, I think maybe you need to own something else. Well, that's not what you tell somebody when, because visions, you have to be careful what who you tell your dreams to, because there are dream killers out there. So you want to be sure you're telling somebody who's going to encourage you and help you along the way.
Is there anything else that you think that people need to know in advance of the upcoming election?
Yes, it's important that we all exercise our rights to vote. I was up in Winsboro today, and in that small town, they have had about 600 people to vote in the last 2 days. That's encouraging. I
Oh, that
think
is.
today,
Winsboro? Oh, that's
yesterday's,
great.
yeah, to
That's great.
yesterday's was 40,000. Okay,
Mm.
yesterday. So I think people are looking for a change. They want something different. And the only way you can accomplish that is to go out and vote and take someone. It doesn't look good. Just one car driving up to go vote. Take 5 or 6 people with you. I mean, do some carpooling. I know we have COVID, the pandemic is still here. Well, I don't know. I heard somebody said the pandemic. I think I even heard the president say the pandemic is not here. Okay. But
That's what
COVID
he
is
said.
alive and well. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
COVID is still here, but you still can help get folk to the poll, especially our seniors. A lot of them don't drive. And with the absentee ballot, if you didn't request it at a certain time, I think it had to be in by the 28th. And then you can't mail it in. You still got to take it to the early voting place. Hmm. That's a whole nother ball game in itself when you do
In
absentee.
itself.
Because of the post, like the mail drops, the mailboxes, half the time you can't even find one. Or so it's all the way on the back side. And I do know that's voter suppression in itself.
Yeah.
So in order to get rid of a lot of that, we have to exercise our rights to vote by any means necessary.
Agreed. Agreed. Well spoken. Well spoken. Um, and I would be remiss if I didn't say to you, um, we want to thank you for your service to the country. Uh, Apparently, you have seen fit to put yourself on the line, your life on the line for that matter, in service to the country. So I want to thank you for that, and on behalf of all of the people who are listening to us, for your having done that. And as they say, Thank you for your service. Um, is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Well, I thank you for thanking me for my service. When I joined I joined the South Carolina Army National Guard, and as a registered nurse in psych nursing, I felt like I was losing my nursing skills. So I said, well, okay, I'll join the National Guard. And when I joined the National Guard, I'll be able to get the training, trauma nursing, a lot of other nursing skills, refresh them, not knowing I'd be going to war, Desert Storm. Who would have thought that would happen at that time? But anyway, I went, I served my country. But, we have to get our hearts and minds need to be changed across the board within the military and everywhere else. I experienced racism in the military, on job, it's everywhere. So I don't know what we do about that, but I think some at some point in time we will have to address issues that we have in this country. And I had to remind a couple of my nurse friends that were attached to our unit that my blood is the same as yours. We may not look alike, but we bleed the same blood, red.
Red.
And I think once we overcome that, we can get a little farther in other areas that we have so many problems with. But we just have to address it head on. We just can't keep saying um, and not talk about it, okay? Because it's everywhere. And like I said, diversity, equality, and inclusion, that's what we have to have.
Diversity, equality, and inclusion.
Hmm.
Well said. You know, a lot of people, I don't know if there's a numerical, a statistical number that's been given to it, but it turns out that many people don't make up their minds about who they're going to vote for until very end of the cycle. So before we close, what do you say to those people who may be on the fence right now, who may think, whatever reason it go, let's stick with the status quo. We don't want to venture into new areas. Um, encourage them that you are the person who will honor their vote and will use their vote to the best advantage of the office of the Secretary of State and to the benefit of South Carolinians general, because after all, there's only one race, and that's the human race. Give them something to think about when they make up their minds in these last few days.
Okay. I believe that being your next Secretary of State, that
Yeah,
we
yeah.
be able to change a lot of scenarios that's happening right now in South Carolina. South Carolina needs to look like America. And in order for it to look like America, we have to vote up and down the ballot for everybody who looks like America. That includes me.
Absolutely.
We have not had anyone of color in that position. And I honestly believe that until we start looking like America, things will never change. I know for a fact that I can work with anyone in any political party across the lines. I served in Desert Storm and I had to work with all nationalities because, in order to make the unit that we had nationalities from France, England, Spain, the Philippines. They were everywhere. And I had to work with them. And I know I can work with any and everyone because I've done that all of my life.
That would be like,
So I believe that We need to make South Carolina the best that we can make it by involving everyone. And that's what I would do. I would include everyone that's already there. Um, it wouldn't be a whole lot of changes, but it'll be better changes, okay? And I think I'm bringing a new leadership, new changes, new visions. South Carolina needs to step up to the plate. We need to get there. We're not there yet, but we can get there if we all work together. So I'm asking for your support and I'm asking for your vote to be your first Madam Secretary of South Carolina.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rosemounda Peggy Butler, very possibly the next Secretary of State of South Carolina. You've heard the words from her mouth. Um, you can always go to her website. Peggy, would you give them your website where you need them to go? She will still accept contributions to aid in, I know it's the last few days, but it's the last few days that counts. So where can they go to help you out?
They can go to
Okay,
www.
okay, there it is. We're running and crawl on the screen. Okay,
Okay, Peggy4SC.com. And you know, one thing I need to tell you, Dr. Cordero, this has not been an easy race for me, funding wise, as far as donations. I guess some people doesn't think that the Secretary of State's office is a real office because I haven't gotten any funds coming in, and this has definitely been on a community campaign. It really has been. It really has been. The reception has been great across the state. I've been to every corner of the state, not every county, but every corner. So it's been fun. I've met some real people, some very nice people, some very um, poor people. A lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are hurting, and they need help across the state. So when you go to vote, make sure you checking up and down the ballot for who you want to represent you, who has your best interest in mind.
thank you.
You're
And
quite
just for the record, before I close, we extend an invitation to the current Secretary of State, only because fairness dictates that we do, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way. But uh, this podcast is always available at that, just in all fairness. But again, thank you so much. And in closing, let me just say, as I always say, that we're here. This is the Cordero Report. We educate to empower. And the one thing that I will not do is I will not argue with anyone that Harriet Tubman would have shot.
right.
Good night.
Good.
Until next time. Thank you so much, madam. I want to say Madam Secretary of State, but you know how we are about that.
I
Much
know.
success. If we can, you can come back and visit us sometime, okay?
I will. Thank you so much, Dr. Cordero.
You're quite welcome. Okay. Good night.
Good night.